Welcome to the LM Report, your trusted source for comprehensive analysis of political, economic, and geopolitical developments shaping our world. I'm your host, Lima, and this is episode 18, recorded on June 23, 2025. Today's episode, titled Global Shifts, National Security, and the Path Forward, delves into recent U.S. military actions in Iran, domestic policy challenges, political dynamics ahead of the 2026 midterms, and the broader implications for global stability. Our mission is to provide clear, factual, and balanced insights to empower our audience with the knowledge needed to navigate these complex times. Let's get started. Section 1. U.S. military actions in Iran. A strategic turning point. Background and context. On June 22, 2025, the United States executed a series of precision airstrikes targeting Iranian nuclear facilities at Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, authorized by President Donald J. Trump. These strikes aim to disrupt Iran's nuclear program, which U.S. intelligence agencies reported was nearing the production of weapons-grade uranium. The operation deployed advanced munitions, including the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator, designed to neutralize deeply buried bunkers while minimizing collateral damage. The Department of Defense confirmed that the strikes achieved their objectives, significantly impairing Iran's ability to weaponize nuclear material. The strikes mark a pivotal moment in U.S.-Iran relations, which have been strained since the 1979 Islamic Revolution and the subsequent hostage crisis at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. Iran's nuclear ambitions have long been a flashpoint, with tensions escalating after the U.S. withdrew from the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, in 2018. The JCPOA, negotiated under President Barack Obama, limited Iran's uranium enrichment to 3.67% in exchange for sanctions relief. Iran's subsequent violations, including enrichment to 60% purity by 2025, prompted renewed U.S. action. Details of the operation. The U.S. strikes targeted three key facilities. Fordo, a fortified underground site near Qom, known for its role in high-level uranium enrichment. Satellite imagery from June 19, 2025 showed unusual activity, including 16 cargo trucks, suggesting possible movement of nuclear materials. 12 GBU-57 bunker busters caused structural collapse, severely limiting Fordo's operational capacity. Natanz, Iran's primary enrichment facility, which sustained direct hits to its centrifuge halls, disrupting the production of enriched uranium. Isfahan, home to Iran's uranium conversion plant, which was rendered inoperable, further crippling Iran's nuclear supply chain. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, confirmed no radiation leaks, highlighting the precision of the operation. Independent analysts, such as Max War, noted that while deeper tunnels may require further scrutiny, the strikes achieved their core objective: dismantling Iran's capacity to produce weapons-grade material in the near term. President Trump, in a Truth Social post, described the damage as monumental, stating, "The sites that we hit in Iran were totally destroyed, and everyone knows it." Iran's response and regional dynamics. Iran retaliated on June 22, 2025, launching 14 ballistic missiles toward U.S. military bases in Qatar and other regional locations. U.S. and allied missile defense systems, including the Patriot and THAAD, intercepted 13 missiles, with the remaining one allowed to land in a non-threatening area. No U.S. flare. Personnel were harmed, and damage was minimal. Iranian officials, speaking anonymously to Reuters, described the response as symbolic, intended to project strength domestically while avoiding full-scale escalation. Qatar, Kuwait, and other allies received advance notice, a tactic Iran employed in 2020 after the U.S. killing of General Qasem Soleimani. The limited nature of Iran's response reflects its strategic constraints. The strikes decimated key nuclear infrastructure, weakening Iran's leverage in regional power dynamics. President Trump characterized the retaliation as weak and expected, noting they've gotten it all out of their system, and there will be hopefully no further hate. He urged Iran and Israel to pursue peace and harmony, signaling a potential diplomatic off-ramp. Regionally, the strikes have reshaped alliances. Israel, a long-standing U.S. partner, conducted complementary operations to disrupt access routes to Iranian facilities, reinforcing its commitment to countering Iran's nuclear threat. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and other Gulf states, which Trump visited prior to the strikes, expressed tacit support, reflecting their shared concerns about Iran's regional influence. Russia and China, while condemning the U.S. actions, avoided escalatory rhetoric, with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov emphasizing diplomatic support for Iran over military involvement. Diplomatic preparations and global reactions. The U.S. operation was preceded by extensive diplomatic coordination. On June 13, 2025, President Trump held an hour-long call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, securing assurances that Russia would not retaliate militarily. This dialogue, confirmed by White House sources, underscores Trump's strategy of de-escalating tensions with major powers before acting. Similarly, engagements with Middle Eastern leaders ensured regional alignment, preventing a broader conflict. Internationally, reactions were mixed. European Union. The EU called for restraint, urging a return to JCPOA negotiations. France and Germany expressed concern over unilateral U.S. action, but acknowledged Iran's violations. United Nations. The Security Council held an emergency meeting on June 23, 2025, but failed to reach consensus on a resolution, reflecting divisions between Western and non-Western members. Non-aligned movement. Countries like India and Brazil criticized the strikes as a violation of sovereignty, advocating for multilateral solutions. Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praised the U.S. for decisive action, pledging continued cooperation. Domestically, the strike sparked debate over presidential authority. Article 2, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution grants the President authority to act as Commander-in-Chief, while the War Powers Resolution of 1973 permits military action for up to 60 days, plus a 30-day withdrawal period, without congressional approval, provided notification is given within 48 hours. President Trump notified Congress, though some lawmakers, including Representative Thomas Massie, RKY, argued that the action required a formal declaration of war. Congressman Greg Steube, RFL, a veteran, countered, stating, "President Trump has full constitutional authority to take military action against Iran's nuclear program. Iran and its proxies were actively seeking nuclear weapons and targeting American troops." Historical context: U.S.-Iran relations. To understand the significance of the 2025 strikes, we must examine the history of U.S.-Iran relations. The 1953 CIA-backed coup against Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, which restored the Shah's rule, sowed decades of mistrust. The 1979 Islamic Revolution, led by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, severed ties, with the 444-day hostage crisis cementing enmity. The 1988 Iran-Iraq War, during which the U.S. supported Iraq, further strained relations. The 1990s and 2000s saw intermittent efforts at dialogue, but Iran's nuclear program, revealed in 2002, became a central issue. The Bush administration labeled Iran part of the axis of evil, while the Obama administration pursued diplomacy, culminating in the JCPOA. The Trump administration's 2018 withdrawal and maximum pressure campaign, including sanctions and the 2020 Soleimani strike, escalated tensions, setting the stage for the 2025 crisis. Strategic implications and future prospects. The strikes have altered the strategic landscape in several ways. Nuclear deterrence. By dismantling Iran's enrichment infrastructure, the U.S. has delayed Iran's nuclear ambitions, though some analysts warn that technical expertise remains intact. Regional power balance. Iran's weakened position may embolden rivals like Saudi Arabia while strengthening U.S. influence in the Middle East. Diplomatic opportunities. President Trump's call for peace suggests a willingness to negotiate, potentially reviving a modified JCPOA or a new agreement. Any deal would likely require Iran to dismantle its program verifiably in exchange for sanctions relief. Domestic politics in Iran. The strikes have intensified internal pressures, with calls for reform growing among Iran's youth. A peaceful leadership transition, supported by regional powers like Russia, could stabilize the country without external intervention. Risks persist, however. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, issued a warning on June 22, 2025, citing a heightened threat environment in the U.S. Until September 2025. The advisory highlights potential cyber attacks by Iranian-affiliated actors and the risk of lone wolf violence inspired by retaliatory rhetoric. While Iran's leadership has not issued a formal call for violence, the DHS urged heightened vigilance, particularly for critical infrastructure and public interventions. The U.S. strikes differ from past interventions, such as the 2011 Libya operation, which led to prolonged instability. Unlike Libya, where NATO's campaign toppled Muammar Gaddafi without a clear post-conflict plan, the Iran strikes are narrowly focused on nuclear facilities, avoiding regime change through military means. President Trump has emphasized an organic transition in Iran, driven by its people, rather than a top-down imposition by external powers. This approach aligns with lessons from Iraq and Afghanistan, where prolonged occupations failed to deliver lasting stability. Section 2. Domestic Policy Challenges. Immigration, Security, and Rights. Immigration enforcement. Balancing security and due process. Immigration remains a polarizing issue in the U.S., with recent cases highlighting the complexities of enforcement. On June 22, 2025, Mahmoud Khalil, a Syrian national, was released from ICE custody in New York City. Within 24 hours, he participated in a protest chanting, "Globalize the Intifada," prompting criticism from commentators like Julie Kelly, who questioned his release given his status as a non-citizen. Khalil's case reflects broader tensions between national security and due process. In another high-profile case, a Washington, D.C. magistrate judge denied a DOJ motion to detain Kilmar Abrigo Garcia, a Salvadoran national charged with drug and human smuggling. Judge Barbara Holmes cited the Bail Reform Act, arguing that Abrigo, despite his non-citizen status, deserved a presumption of innocence. The decision sparked outrage, with critics like Mike Davis calling it lawless. The DOJ clarified that Abrigo would remain in custody pending further review, underscoring the administration's commitment to robust enforcement. These incidents occur against a backdrop of intensified immigration policies. Since January 2025, ICE has increased detentions by 30%, focusing on individuals with criminal records or ties to terrorist organizations. The administration has also expanded deportation proceedings, with 150 zero removals reported in 2025, according to ICE data. However, legal challenges persist as courts grapple with balancing constitutional protections and public safety. Public opinion is divided. A June 2025 Pew Research survey found that 60% of Americans support stricter border security, while 45% believe current policies unfairly target migrants. The debate is further complicated by economic arguments, with industries like agriculture and construction relying on migrant labor. The administration is exploring reforms, including expedited deportation processes and increased funding for border infrastructure, though legislative gridlock remains a hurdle. Cybersecurity threats and legislative responses. The U.S. House of Representatives' recent ban on WhatsApp, announced on June 20, 2025, reflects growing concerns over cybersecurity. Citing potential surveillance risks, particularly given WhatsApp's ownership by Meta, the House mandated the use of secure, government-issued devices for official communications. This move follows reports of foreign actors exploiting commercial apps, with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, documenting a 15% rise in state-sponsored attacks in 2024, including from Iran and China. The DHS warning on Iran-related threats further underscores cyber risks. Iranian-affiliated hacktivists have targeted U.S. networks, with low-level attacks disrupting local government systems in 2024. In response, Congress is considering the Cybersecurity Enhancement Act of 2025, which would mandate encryption standards for federal agencies and incentivize private sector adoption. The bill faces resistance from tech companies, who argue it could stifle innovation, but enjoys bipartisan support among lawmakers prioritizing national security. Second Amendment and constitutional debates. In Texas, Governor Greg Abbott's June 18, 2025, signing of a bill removing short-barrel rifles from the state's prohibited weapons list has reignited debates over gun rights. The Second Amendment states, "A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." Historical records, including the Federalist Papers, clarify that regulated refers to training, not government oversight, and arms encompasses evolving weaponry, from muskets to modern firearms. Advocates argue that restrictions like licensing and permits violate the amendment's clear mandate. They point to the First Amendment, which prohibits laws abridging free speech, as a parallel. Just as speech requires no permit, neither should gun ownership. Critics, however, cite rising gun violence, with the CDC reporting 48 zero firearm-related deaths in 2023. They advocate for background checks, red flag laws, and assault weapon bans to prevent mass shootings, which have increased 20% since 2020 per FBI data. The Trump administration has signaled a review of federal gun laws, with Attorney General Jeff Sessions tasked with assessing their constitutionality. Potential reforms include streamlining concealed carry reciprocity across states, though any changes will face legal and political challenges. The Supreme Court, with its conservative majority, is likely to play a decisive role, as seen in recent rulings like New York State Rifle, Pistol Association v. Bruin, 2022, which expanded carry rights. Historical context, rights and restrictions. The tension over gun rights reflects broader debates about constitutional interpretation. The Founding Fathers, wary of centralized power, designed the Bill of Rights to protect individual liberties. The Second Amendment, ratified in 1791, was rooted in the colonial experience, where militias defended against external threats and internal tyranny. Over time, however, urbanization and technological advancements complicated its application. The 1934 National Firearms Act, which regulated machine guns and sawed-off shotguns, marked the first major federal gun law. Subsequent legislation, including the 1968 Gun Control Act and the 1994 Assault Weapons Ban, introduced further restrictions, often in response to rising crime. Critics argue these laws erode constitutional protections, while supporters view them as necessary for public safety. The current debate, amplified by Texas's deregulation, underscores the challenge of balancing rights and responsibilities in a modern context. Section 3. Political Dynamics and the 2026 Midterms. Congressional Divisions and Leadership Challenges. President Trump's recent criticism of Representative Thomas Massie, RKY, highlights fractures within the Republican Party as the 2026 midterms loom. On June 22, 2025, Trump posted on Truth Social, labeling Massie not MAGA and accusing him of opposing the Iran strikes and other priorities, including a proposed tax reform bill. Massie's libertarian stance, emphasizing congressional oversight, resonates with some voters but alienates party loyalists who prioritize Trump's agenda. Trump's strategy is twofold: consolidate his base and expose perceived disloyalty. He has endorsed primary challenges against incumbents like Massie, mirroring his 2022 efforts, which saw successes in races like Ohio's Senate primary, but failures in Georgia's gubernatorial race. The approach risks alienating moderates, with 30% of Republicans expressing concern over party infighting, per a June 2025 Gallup poll. Democrats face their own challenges. With approval ratings at 25%, according to Gallup, the party struggles to counter voter frustration over inflation, 3.5% in June 2025, and border security. Their defense of progressive policies, including immigration reform and international diplomacy, has failed to resonate, particularly in swing states. The party's alignment with certain international causes, such as Iran's leadership, has drawn criticism for appearing disconnected from domestic priorities. Key issues and voter priorities. The 2026 midterms will hinge on several issues. Economy. Inflation and job growth remain top concerns, with 55% of voters citing economic stability as their primary issue, per a June 2025 Pew Research survey. The administration's tax reform proposal, which promises to avoid a 68% tax hike, is a focal point, though Massie's opposition complicates GOP unity. Border security. 60% of Americans support stricter enforcement, with Republican ads highlighting cases like Khalil and Abrigo. Democrats counter with calls for comprehensive reform, including pathways to citizenship, but face skepticism from moderates. National security. The Iran strikes have elevated foreign policy, with 45% of voters expressing concern over global stability. Republicans frame the strikes as a success, while Democrats criticize the lack of congressional input. Social issues. climate change and reproductive rights motivate younger voters, with Democrats hoping to mobilize urban demographics. However, GOP messaging on crime and security resonates in suburban areas. Electoral landscape. Republicans aim to expand their House majority, currently 225, 210, and retake the Senate, where Democrats hold a 51-49 edge. Key battlegrounds include Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Arizona, where GOP challengers are leveraging Trump's popularity. Democrats are focusing on turnout in urban centers and among Gen Z voters who comprised 20% of the 2024 electorate per exit polls. The outcome will shape the legislative agenda. A Republican sweep could accelerate tax cuts, deregulation, and border security measures, while a divided Congress would likely perpetuate gridlock. Both parties are investing heavily in voter outreach, with $2 billion in ad spending projected by November 2026, according to AdImpact. Historical parallels. Midterm dynamics. Midterms often serve as referenda on the incumbent president. In 1994, Republicans gained 54 House seats. Historical parallels. Midterm dynamics. Midterms often serve as referenda on the incumbent president. In 1994, Republicans gained 54 House seats amid backlash against President Bill Clinton's healthcare plan. In 2010, the Tea Party wave cost Democrats 63 seats due to opposition to the Affordable Care Act. Trump's high approval rating, 52% per Rasmussen reports, gives Republicans an edge, but historical trends suggest that voter turnout and economic conditions will be decisive. Section 4. The Path to Peace and Stability. U.S. Foreign Policy. Peace through Strength. President Trump's foreign policy is guided by peace through strength, a doctrine that emphasizes military dominance to deter aggression while creating space for diplomacy. The Iran strikes exemplify this approach, showcasing U.S. capabilities while opening the door to negotiations. In a June 23, 2025 post, Trump declared, "Congratulations, world, it's time for peace," signaling his intent to transition from confrontation to deal-making. This strategy draws on historical precedents. President Ronald Reagan's Cold War policies combined military buildup with arms control agreements, such as the 1987 INF Treaty. Similarly, Trump's engagements with Putin and Middle Eastern leaders reflect a blend of strength and pragmatism. Potential outcomes include nuclear agreement, a revised JCPOA or new framework requiring Iran to dismantle its program in exchange for sanctions relief, regional cooperation, a U.S.-led coalition to counter terrorism, building on the Abraham Accords, which normalized Israel's ties with several Arab states. Leadership transition in Iran, a peaceful, people-driven change supported by regional powers to avoid the instability of past interventions like Libya. Domestic unity and accountability. At home, the administration is prioritizing accountability. A special prosecutor appointed in May 2025 is investigating alleged election irregularities from 2020 and 2024 with a DOJ report detailing vulnerabilities in voting systems. The administration is also reviewing federal agencies aiming to cut costs by 10% by 2027 per OMB projections. These efforts face resistance from Democrats who argue they undermine public trust. Restoring confidence is critical. A June 2025 Rasmussen Reports poll found that 55% of Americans believe the government prioritizes special interests. Transparent governance, coupled with tangible results on economic recovery and security, will be essential. The administration's infrastructure plan, which allocates $500 billion for roads and broadband, could bolster public support if implemented effectively. Global and domestic challenges. Several challenges loom. Cyber threats. Iran's potential for cyber retaliation requires robust defenses. CISA is expanding its Cyber Incident Reporting for Critical Infrastructure Act, mandating real-time reporting of attacks. Economic pressures. Global supply chain disruptions, exacerbated by Middle East tensions, have driven oil prices to $90 per barrel per EIA data. The Federal Reserve is considering rate hikes, which could slow growth. Social cohesion. Polarization remains high, with 70% of Americans viewing the opposing party as a threat per a 2025 YouGov poll. Bridging this divide will require bipartisan efforts on issues like veterans' care and disaster relief. The LM report envisions a world where the U.S. leads with integrity, fostering stability through strength and cooperation. By addressing nuclear proliferation, securing borders, and promoting economic growth, the nation can build a brighter future. Engaging citizens through informed dialogue is central to this mission, empowering individuals to shape their communities and country. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the LM Report. We've explored the U.S. strikes in Iran, domestic policy challenges, political dynamics, and the path to peace. Our commitment is to deliver accurate, thoughtful analysis to equip you with the knowledge to navigate these times. If you found this episode insightful, please subscribe to the LM Report on YouTube and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Share this episode with friends, family, and colleagues to spark meaningful conversations. Together, we can stay informed and build a stronger, more united future. I'm Lima, and I'll see you in the next episode. Be well, be safe, and stay engaged.